Bill, let me begin with Bill Hamblin. Just on any specific points you'd like to raise regarding the papers that Jeff shared.
Should we do one at a time or both?
Why don't you do both in half the time each?
If I do neither, can I take the full time?
As always, I find Jeff Bradshaw's works very insightful, and I just have two comments on this. Number one is, I don't know how to work through the methodological questions of trying to understand, did Joseph know about the endowment earlier? I think that's something we need to, earlier than it was revealed to the people. And so I think we need to just kind of think through how do we engage that issue of what did Joseph know and did he know it. My second point is that I think in his chart that he has of the way of life and way of death, I think we could add another component to that, and that is the Tower of Babel, which is noted as both a city and a tower. And tower in Hebrew is migdal, which just means large building of any sort. And in my view, this is an anti-temple, an illegitimate temple intended to rival God's glory. And Enoch's temple city successfully reaches into heaven and descends into heaven, whereas the Tower of Babel, tower/city/temple of Babel, fails, and it's trying to do exactly the same thing. So we have an antitype of Enoch successful in this ascent, Tower of Babel failing as an antitype in that ascent. And that can be another part of that chart there. So,
You want me to go on with a couple comments on Larsen too, or Jeff? Go ahead.
In terms of Larsen's paper, I think I found it fascinating, very stimulating. I had never thought of the issue in those terms before. He's raised some great issues there, and I look forward to seeing the longer, more lengthy discussion. A couple of things you might want to think about. One is the concept of synchronos or co-enthronement scenes mentioned in both Matthew and Revelation seem to indicate a communal ascent. Those people who, when the 12 sit down beside God, we've got a communal aspect to that. You might want to take a look at the Therapeutai mentioned by Philo of Alexandria, who some contemporary scholars see as associated with this. I don't know if this is a new longer paper or not. Maybe you already thought of these, but that's another possible example. And I think the earliest Christian monastic orders were, in a sense, communitarian efforts to live the life of angels on earth. They sang the liturgy with the angels. They explicitly described themselves as doing this. And they're there to help each other do what Thomasson, an early monk, called the ladder of ascent. You want to follow this ladder and contemplatively ascend in the presence of God. And you do it as a community. You can't do it alone. So they form these communal ascent communities in a sense. So those are just some other examples that you may have already had them in your longer paper.
Good. Thank you, Bill. Jeff, David, you want to make any response or thoughts about Bill's points?
Real quick, Matthew Brown, before his untimely death, did a lot of work on sort of the events by which he saw at least the temple doctrines unfold in the keys way earlier than many of us have realized. And I know there's others in this room and some out of this room. I'm aware of some who've also worked on that. So I agree with Bill that that's a topic that we now need to write up. I'm waiting for Matt to do it now. If he hasn't, we've got to get it done. Anybody who's interested, let's talk. Then secondly, I just want to say, with respect to the second point, I agree with Bill wholeheartedly, so we're going to try and work that point in about Tower of Babel. I think it's a perfect counterpoint to the city of Enoch.
Just responding to Bill's great suggestions. I did have some time limitations, so I was going to mention Revelation and the Therapeutai, but the idea of the monastic orders and ascent communities, I had not come across that. I think that's a great idea that needs to be looked into. This definitely seems to be a very common theme in ancient religious worship that the worship that you did was in communion with the angels, and I think that's a very interesting thing for Latter-day Saints as we think about our own temple experience and what it is we're doing, and some of those ideas in the background that we might not think of. So I appreciate that, Bill, and I will definitely look into these things as I go along with you together. Thank you.
Okay.
Let me, just stick one thing. As you pursue this, it's been a long time since I read this thing, but Athanasius writes a long story about St. Anthony, who was an early monk, and you might check that source. Read that document, Athanasius on St. Anthony. So, let's see what you pick up this communal movement. Anthony himself, of course, was a guy who went to solo, but others came to form a community around him. So.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Nickelsburg and I were just talking about whether there's any sense of communal ascent in First Enoch, where the Enoch figure leads other people to a state of glory, and I wondered if you wanted to just make a quick point on that.
No, but I just suggested it back in 1966 that the very last chapter, the very last verses of the book of Enoch, I will seat each one on the throne of his honor, and they will shine without number, for righteousness the judgment of God, and faithful to the faithful he shows faithfulness, that abide in the paths of truth, and the righteous will shine, and those who were born in darkness will be cast into darkness, and they will depart. Sounds like a communal, a democratizing of the 62nd, 63rd chapter of Enoch, where it talks about the Son of Man sits on the throne of his glory. The kings and the mighty are forced to acknowledge the righteous judgment of God. The righteous are blessed, and the wicked are taken away and sent down into the darkness of Sheol. I thought for a long time that sounds like a communalizing, a democratizing of the description of the enthronement of the Son of Man, of the judgment that takes place, and the consequences.
Might this also have anything to do with Might this also have anything to do with the expression "sons of light," which catches there, for instance, at the end of Jesus' parable on the unjust steward, when Jesus is talking. This is in Luke 16. When he's talking about this. There's a very interesting piece that I'll get in trouble here for guys at Hebrew University who worked in one of this sort of thing. In a book of bits too, he wrote a chapter that he published earlier on the sons of light as expression, particularly out of the Dead Sea Scrolls, but also as it appears in Luke 16. So his name will come to me before the hour is over.
The righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. A wonderful orchestration of this in the Mendelssohn's Elijah. Then will the righteous shine, it will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. The wise will shine. The wise. How does that go? Daniel 12:3. The wise will shine like the stars, and those who lead many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. And so there is, also in chapter 104 of Enoch, it talks about going up to heaven. You have an ascent. communal ascent to heaven, and they will be like the angels. So you have an angelification of the righteous, and that's a common motif that runs through. And I think you find that stuff in my commentary somewhere in there. And I think there may be some references to sons of light. If you look in the index and look for 1QS3, there are a couple of things in the parables that just a little bit like 1QS3, and I didn't expect to find them there because the same is not found at Qumran. But yeah, I think the end of the book, the very end of the book, sounds a little bit like the Sons of Light stuff from Qumran, but you do have the glorification and the angelification and the shinification of righteous. It's a common reference that it also occurs in Second Baruch. In Second Baruch, they go up, they ascend to heaven. Now that's something to look at too. In Second Baruch 50:51, 49:51, the righteous go up to heaven and they're like the angels. Yeah.
Great. Let me shift gears a little, Gordon. Have a comment from you.
Thank you. This week has been a sort of a time machine, taking me back to the 1960s, especially when I was a graduate student here from Italy. Was learning, among other things, some of his early work on Enoch. And then, a decade later, I was at Cornell when Matthew Black was visiting there. The previous generation, his Aramaic approach to the Gospel of Acts represented a big change in scholarship away from the raw Greek approach. And then he was mainly a Dead Sea Scrolls scholar. His book on First Enoch and with Father Miller, his book on Qumran Enoch, brought him to Cornell, and he was arguing rather interestingly that there were secret survivals of the Enoch tradition which preceded Genesis and which Moses drew upon, but a radical argument in some ways, to create Genesis. But anyway, by the time I finished listening to Matthew Black, I was levitating in my chair, and I asked him afterwards if he was familiar with the Enoch, Joseph Smith and Christ. And he said, oh, is that the 1821 Lawrence? And I said, no, it was published in 1830, but happily at the time I had a list of parallels between Qumran and Enoch from Dr. Nibley and the Prophet Christ. And I went through this list of things that are in the Qumran texts and in the Prophet Christ, but not in First Enoch, which was what was available at that time. And as I went through the list, I finally got to the name of Hoja, and he sort of held his hands up and turned back, slow down a second, give him a break. And so I stopped, and he thought for a second, and he said, well, when was it published? And I said, well, he was putting it down on paper about 1830, and it's published in 1832. And he said, well, because he'd been talking about these esoteric groups in Europe that had been maintaining the Enoch tradition in secret for centuries. And he said, one of them must have come to New York with the Enoch text that they're describing and given it to Joseph Smith to translate and publish. And I said, well, that's a hypothesis. But it left rather interesting basis for discussion because he could tell whatever else there was to say that he could not derive the Joseph Smith Enoch text in the Prophet Christ from the 1821 Lawrence. They just aren't the same kind of animal. And it was a very, very fascinating discussion. And I just, as I said, over the decades, I suddenly find myself back in this world here in 2013.
Good. Obviously, there's a lot more to say and a lot of things to do. I thought, Kent, maybe it would be good to have you make a comment about just the general value that you think people can see in our use of First Enoch. not only as Latter-day Saints, but in our study of the New Testament.
Well, as you heard me before with Professor Nickelsburg, there are pieces that show up in the gospel text that obviously bear a relationship to the Enoch literature, the first Enoch, say in the form of titles, and like those that are repeated in the first Enoch and then are applied to Jesus in the gospel text. Not the least of which, of course, is the fact that the Epistle of Jude quotes a passage from 1 Enoch, chapter 1, verse 9. That's the citation of 1 Enoch. The citation in Jude is verses 14 and 15. Quote that passage. There's also some evidence that an earlier verse, verse 9, seems also to quote from the Testament of Moses, now known only in a Latin palimpsest. But there were early Christian fathers who said that Jude was quoting from this text. So there were Christian writers who valued this text and whose canon or set of sacred scriptures is actually broader than that which has come down to us from our Judeo-Christian heritage. So there is it. Jude, in effect, underscores the value of this kind of text and invites us to become participants in reading, studying, and making sense of some of this stuff. If we, of course, go back to the prophet Joseph's statement in section 91 about the Apocrypha and its value and what we can gain from it if we approach it carefully. That's at least been my experience too, in working with these kinds of texts over a number of decades. So, for me, it's when you brew inside of a text like Luke's Gospel, all kinds of things begin to emerge, and certainly some of them relate to First Enoch.
Professor Nickelsburg, perhaps I could ask you one last comment along that same line. How do you find the world of New Testament studies responding to your commentary, and are they finding the same kind of value that Kent Brown and the rest of us are finding here?
I haven't read a single review of the second volume. I've seen some nice ones in the first volume. Maybe I haven't got the nerve to do it. Maybe the press just doesn't send them to me anymore. No, I hear very nice things as I've heard from you people. And like I say, I just hope it's a little value to some people as they carry on their studies. I think that this literature has just not been plumbed by New Testament scholarship. And I remember reading a review of Meshrif somewhere where one of the reviewers said, well, they see it and they don't do anything with it. So I just hope that that it will be of value. And I guess I can say people seem to think it is, and that makes me pleased no end.
Well, let me ask you to join me in thanking all of the people who have been here today and all of their comments. And if I could take the privilege of reading to you a few concluding lines so that First Enoch gets the last word here. Professor Nickelsburg and I were talking last night, and I think this is one of his favorite parts of First Enoch. And it also, I think, shows what a skillful translator he is, that the beauty, not just the content, but the beautiful flow and the sound of the words and the uplifting values here that I enjoy, as Kent says, living in the text like this and letting it sink into what you are becoming and what you are thinking. So just coming out of part of chapter 103. Do not say, you who are righteous and pious in life, in the days of our tribulation we toiled laboriously, and every tribulation we saw, and many evils we found. We were consumed and became few, and our spirits small, and we were destroyed, and there was no one to help us with word and deed. We were powerless and found nothing. Do not say, we were crushed and destroyed, and we gave up hope any more of not knowing safety from day to day, and we hoped to be the head and became the tail. I swear unto you that the angels in heaven make mention of you for good before the glory of the Great One, and your names are written before the glory of the Great One. Take courage then, for formerly you were worn out by evils and tribulations, but now you will shine like the luminaries of heaven. You will shine and appear, and the portals of heaven will be opened for you. Your cry will be heard, and the judgment for which you cry will also appear for you. Therefore take courage, and do not abandon your hope, for you will have great joy like the angels of heaven. Fear not, O righteous, when you see the sinners growing strong and prospering, and do not be their companions, but stay far from all their iniquities, for you will be companions of the hosts of heaven. May it be so, is my wish and prayer. Go well. Thank you for being here, and blessings to all of you.